Hey, this is Mike Robbins. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast. Hope you're doing well, you, your family, your team, everyone around you. I'm recording this as a podcast, but also on YouTube again this week. So if you're joining on YouTube, nice to see you there. Today, I want to talk about something that I've written about a little bit over the years and talked about in different ways here on the show, but I want to talk about allowing. The art of allowing, the practice of allowing, really just allowing things to happen, allowing things to show up, which, is often easier said than done, especially for me. So, what do I mean by allowing? Allowing is really about letting things come to us. I was watching a baseball game on TV over the weekend, and I was a pitcher in baseball, right? But I was listening to the commentators, and they were talking about allowing the ball to travel, which is this phenomenon that as a hitter, you got to respond quickly, right? To decide if you're going to swing at the pitch or not. But sometimes, and I struggled this way as a hitter myself when I played baseball all those years, I would jump out and, kind of start too fast. But if you let the ball travel a little bit, you can often take a better swing and hit the ball on the barrel. So, not to get too inside baseball, literally, but I was thinking about that kind of as a metaphor for life, just allowing things to happen, allowing things to breathe, allowing things to show up. I was working with um, a pretty senior leader recently, and I was doing some coaching with him. And one of the things that came up in our conversations had to do with some of the people on his team and really, him being honest and open about struggling with how do I empower people? How do I make sure that I delegate and trust them, but at the same time, verify that what they're doing is what I want them to be doing and hold them accountable? And where's that balance? You don't want to be a micromanager on the one hand, but you also don't want to be so unaware and uninvolved that things are kind of spiraling out of control. And one of the things that I said to him was, look, if you're busy taking responsibility for everything, you're not giving people the space to step up into taking responsibility themselves. And this can be true in leadership, it can be true in parenting, it can be true in life, right? And taking responsibility, being proactive, being engaged, being involved in things, taking actions, not just waiting around for things to happen. All of that is really positive in so many ways. And there's a balance to it, allowing ourselves to actually trust, allowing ourselves to step back, allowing ourselves to allow things to happen, as opposed to feeling like we have to go make everything happen. And this is something that I've thought about and grappled with, and quite frankly, struggled with for a lot of my life. And particularly running my business and doing my work, which I love to do. And even back when I was an athlete, there's so much work involved in being good at things, right? In the skill of whatever it is that we do, but also the discipline of getting up and being willing to do the work to build a business, to become a better leader, to communicate effectively, to, master the technical skills involved in whatever work we do. And at the same time, we've got to be able to balance that out with time off, with breaks, with disconnecting, right? We all know that. And it's harder than ever these days. As amazing as all of this technology is, that you can listen to me or watch me right in this moment, it's also at times overwhelming. And we can spend all day, every day working and communicating and connecting and realize, wow, I didn't take any time to breathe, to hydrate, to exercise, to rest, to relax, to meditate, not to mention to allow the things that I'm working on to actually manifest themselves. There's another metaphor or example that I often think of that goes back to my sports playing days. And I remember working with our weight trainer at Stanford when I was in college playing baseball there. And he was the first person to really explain to me the importance of rest. And I was in the weight room working hard, and he would see me in there on a pretty regular basis because I did a lot of training and working out in those days. And he came to me one day and he said, "Hey, Mike, I appreciate your commitment. I appreciate the effort in you showing up." And he said, "I'm a little concerned though. You're working out so much, you're not giving your body and your muscles a chance to rest and relax." And he said, "In fact, building muscle and getting stronger is a lot about the rest." He said, because when you actually work out, when you lift weights and when you come in here and train, what you're doing is breaking down the muscles. And then the rest period is what allows them to actually rebuild. And if you do this effectively, Over time, you'll build your strength, you'll build your endurance. Ultimately, if you do some stretching, you'll also build your flexibility, he said. But if you overdo it, you're not only more likely to injure yourself, you're not actually allowing the impact of the exercise to really take hold. And I remember thinking about that at the time. And again, I struggled with this balance. I struggled with this modulation of effort and rest, of action and allowing. And I think it's something that most of us struggle with to some degree, on one side or the other, quite frankly, because again, maybe you have a tendency to allow too much, so to speak, which is another way of saying not being proactive, not being in action. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. But maybe you have a tendency, like me, to overdo it and constantly be in action and be in motion. Another important distinction to remember is there's a difference between activity and productivity, right? We can be busy doing stuff all day, every day. There's more than enough stuff to do. But the question is, am I being productive? Am I being effective and efficient in the actions that I'm taking? Right? I could call and email lots and lots of people all day long, let's say if I'm in a sales role, but am I being strategic about who I'm reaching out to, how I'm reaching out to them, and is that effective in terms of the result? Again, for me, sometimes one of the ways that I manage my anxiety, if I'm feeling worried about the production of a result that's important to me, is I'll just take a lot of action, which sometimes can be productive and sometimes can just be a lot of activity. So there are things that get in our way that don't allow us to allow. Some of those things have to do with incessant activity, as I'm mentioning. Some of it has to do with also not trusting the process, not trusting that things will work out, not trusting that things will show up. But if you think about some of the biggest successes in your life, the biggest accomplishments, the most important experiences, usually, even if there was a lot of work involved in getting to that point, there were things along the way, and then ultimately the culmination of that that did require you to actually step back, allow, and receive, if you will, to let the thing happen. Many years ago, I spent a lot of time um, sending out pitches to the media, which is something that I still do, but I'd have books coming out and, we hired some publicists and different people. I didn't know anything about the media, 20 years ago or so. And I wrote my first book, Focus on the Good Stuff. It came out in 2007. Then I wrote my second book, Be Yourself, Everyone Else Has Already Taken. That came out in 2009. And at the time, I really, really, really wanted to be on the Oprah Winfrey show, right? Getting on Oprah in those days was like, in the old days, even further back, if you were a comedian, getting on the Tonight Show, it was like huge, huge audience, huge success. And, so over the years, I had connected with some people who had the names of some of the producers at the Oprah Winfrey Show, and the publicists would pitch them. And, you know, I actually had a list of names and email addresses for some of the producers for the Oprah Winfrey Show. So from time to time, if I had an idea, I'd pitch them and didn't hear a lot back. I could only imagine how many responses they would get. I mean, pitches they would get, and it's hard for them to respond. So anyway, but I was in this process. And I was taking a lot of action, hoping to produce that result. And one day I sent an email, but I actually had a typo in the email, and it went to someone else within Harpo Productions, which was Oprah's production company at the time, producing the Oprah show. And this woman responded back to me and said, "Oh, I'm not Christine, I'm Catherine, but here's her email address. And by the way, I checked out your website and you have some interesting material." And I said, "Great, and thank you." And we emailed back and forth. And then many, many months later, that same woman that I had accidentally emailed reached out to me and asked if I would write an article for Oprah.com. I did. And then it turned into, I published about 30 articles on Oprah.com and a couple in O Magazine. I became a regular contributor for Oprah's website, which wasn't something that I was specifically pitching. I never did ultimately get on the Oprah Winfrey Show on TV, but I remember thinking of that as such an interesting example of, I made a mistake in the email. I sent it to the wrong person, but then this kind of showed up on its own, if that makes sense. Sometimes if we're just putting ourselves out into the universe, trusting that opportunities will come our way, we have to be open and available to allowing things to happen, right? Maybe you're worried about one of your kids, or you're coaching one of your employees and you really want them to act a certain way, do a certain thing, produce a certain result. totally makes sense. But a big part of influence and leadership is really about, yes, showing up, yes, giving feedback, yes, coaching, yes, being willing to have those sweaty palm conversations, but it's also creating the space and allowing people to step into that, knowing that you can't force them to do it. With ourselves, some of the biggest and most important goals and dreams that you have right now, yes, there's actions to take. Yes, there's things to do. Yes, there's books to read and exercise to do and, you know, things to write and brainstorm about or to practice or to train at or whatever it is. There's lots and lots of actions that we can take. And again, I'm a big believer in the importance of taking action, the willingness to take action, even and especially when we get scared. But how often do we think about consciously allowing, consciously receiving? A lot of our experience of life has to do with the resonance, if you will, that we put out into the world. Have you ever noticed there's certain people in your life who good things always happen to them? Or not always, but often, let's say. And sometimes maybe that's you, and great. Maybe it's someone you know and you get envious of that, right? You also probably know people where a lot of bad things happen. And again, I'm not saying that we're overtly causing this, although sometimes we do. But at a minimum, we are allowing those things into our experience, if you will. And I don't think that it's completely random. I don't think it's just like, oh, it just fell out of the sky and this person got lucky and this other person got unlucky. And look, there are certain things that happen in our lives that are definitely lucky and other things that are unlucky. Clearly, if you've walked around the planet for long enough, you've experienced both. And maybe you tend to experience, lucky things versus unlucky things more often or vice versa. But some of that could have to do with, again, our resonance, the energy that we're putting out there. What would it be like if in the morning, whatever time you take as you're in the shower getting ready, as you're maybe you have a meditation practice like I do, maybe you have a journaling practice, maybe you go on walks, but whatever time, maybe it's sitting with a cup of coffee. And I know it can be hard these days with our phones and with all the distractions and with all the things going on, but whatever time of day or whatever time, maybe it's in the evening, that you allow yourself to contemplate, to think, to feel, to just breathe. What if you could close your eyes and just imagine good things coming your way, allowing the space for those things to show up? What is it that you want? What is it that you wish for and hope for? And yes, it's important to take actions towards those things. Of course, just sitting on the couch and hoping that things will get better or hoping that good things show up is probably not the most effective strategy for things to show up. However, I think we under index on the power of this for ourselves, but also for our teams and our families and the people around us, right? Setting the intention, being clear about what it is we want. Yes, taking actions that are going to hopefully lead to that result, but also leaving space for magic, for miracles, for unexpected goodness, trusting that those things will show up. All of this is predicated on our ability to practice the art of allowing. So, what are some things we can do specifically to increase our capacity for allowing, to increase our capacity for receiving? There's four specific things that I want to talk through here that we can do on a regular basis. They're not that complicated to understand, to even to do. It's just sometimes they're not always so easy to remember or to really embody. The first thing that we can do is practice presence, really being in the present moment. So allowing starts with being fully present. So encouraging ourselves, the people around us, to try to minimize the distractions and get present. Now, this is, again, easier said than done. We're often busy doing a million things at once. We're on our phones and on our computers and going here and there and everywhere, and there's so much coming at us. So being present is challenging. I find it's easier for me in the mornings, early in the morning when I first wake up, to meditate, to write in my journal, to really breathe. I can focus more on the present moment. Not that I can't do it throughout the day, but as I get caught up with my day and I'm kind of going here, there, and everywhere like you, it can be more challenging, or I'm busy planning for the future, or I'm busy sort of rehashing something from the past. But can we be in the present moment, connect with ourselves, connect with others, connect with nature? That is the first step of us really embracing and sort of embodying the art of allowing. The second thing that we can do is to really cultivate gratitude. Now, I've talked about gratitude. I've written about gratitude. I've studied gratitude and appreciation for years. My whole career has been based on a foundation of gratitude and appreciation. Now, just because I say that, because I understand it, because I've researched it, I've written about it, I've talked about it for years, doesn't mean I always remember to be grateful, to focus on what I'm grateful for. So, one of the things we can do as we step more into this space of allowing and trusting that good things will happen is remind ourselves of all the good things that have happened or that currently are happening, even and especially if things are challenging. A lot of times, one of the best things we can do in the midst of challenging experiences is to stop and go, okay, what can I be grateful for right now? I'm grateful that I'm alive. I'm grateful I have a job. I'm grateful I have people who love me. I'm grateful I have resources to try to figure things out. I'm grateful that there's so many things to be grateful for always, whether things are going awesome or things are really, really hard or they're somewhere in between, which is usually where they are. We can cultivate gratitude, that mindset of gratitude. It's one of the reasons that I keep a gratitude journal. And I have for years. I write down 3 things I'm grateful for and also 3 things that I forgive myself for as a way to cultivate more compassion in general and specifically with myself, because I find that's something that often gets in my way. So, practicing presence, being in the present moment, cultivating gratitude, focusing on what we're grateful for, focusing on what we appreciate, who we appreciate, what's going well, what's showing up that we can acknowledge and really value. The third thing is for us, and this is a big one, again, easier said than done, definitely for me, is let go of control. So this is about understanding and accepting that we can't control everything. And in fact, all we can really control is our attitude and our effort, right? Our attitude is our mindset, our approach, our effort is our behavior, our actions. And in the case of allowing, sometimes what's best to do is to take no action, or at least consciously, deliberately stop taking action, because we want to be mindful about it. We want to be thoughtful about it. We want to be intentional about it, right? So, ways to practice letting go of control, it can be breathing, it can be meditating, it can be just reminding ourselves, okay, I can control my attitude, my mindset, my perspective. I can control my effort, my actions. Maybe in some cases, I need to take some more action. Maybe in some cases, I know this is true for me, maybe less action, pausing, breathing, right? I did an episode a while back after hearing Brene Brown say something about freaking out. And, she said whenever she starts to freak out, she asks herself 2 questions. One is, do I have enough information actually to freak out? And usually the answer is no. And the second question is freaking out going to help this situation? And the answer is almost always no to that. But so much of the freaking out has to do with thinking that we can control the outcome. So practicing presence first, cultivating gratitude second, letting go of control third. And then the fourth thing that we can do is to really listen deeply. Now, this may involve listening to other people, what's going on with them, but really listening, pausing, reflecting before acting. Again, something that I find I got to remind myself of. But sometimes it's actually listening to ourselves more deeply. What's true for me? What's coming through for me? And even weirdly, I know this sounds a little strange, but like listening to what's wanting to emerge, if you will. Look, one of the things that I've learned over the years of, 24 years now of public speaking, and I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do in the world, is that if I can get present when I'm on stage or I'm in front of a group, I'm leading a workshop, I'm giving a keynote speech, even when I'm doing it virtually on Zoom, although it's a little harder to do that way, can I listen to the listening? Can I listen to what's emerging even in the room, in the space, in the collective community? Sounds a little weird, I know, but I have found that if we really pay attention, we can hear a lot more than simply what's being said. There's inner wisdom that comes from us, that comes from others. Sometimes, if we really listen more deeply, we can get more clarity. I was just away for a couple days on retreat, which I like to do, and I found a lot of ideas came to me. You ever notice sometimes you're in the shower and ideas come to you, or you're driving in your car? It's like, wait a minute, what? It's because we're giving ourselves some space to actually listen. Sometimes even listening to another person. You could be listening to me right now, which you are, hopefully, even if you're multitasking and doing other things. And sometimes ideas may come to you simply by listening to me or listening to someone else. So those four things, if we can practice those, being present, number one, cultivating that gratitude, number two, letting go of control, number three, and number four, listening deeply. All of those things will allow us to get more into that state of allowing, where we can create more space, let things show up, let people show up, let opportunities show up, let responsibility show up, and even outcomes. Again, it's not that we're not going to take action. It's not that we're not going to go for the things that we want. That's what last week's episode was about, going for it. But this is also the yin and the yang of it, if you will, the allowing it to happen. So we're not trying to force the outcome. This is something that I'm definitely working on in my life right now and finding both very exciting and quite challenging. So I hope you could relate to this in various ways and it's relevant to you, to your team, to your family, to the people around you. Thanks for listening or watching. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube, so you're subscribed to the channel, or the follow button if you're listening to this in whatever podcast app or platform you happen to listen to. I love it if you leave comments or ask questions. And also, we're super grateful when you leave a rating or a review. That helps more people know about the show. And there's links in the show notes of the podcast for ways that you can connect with me on social media. And there's probably also some links on the YouTube post there as well. Best place to connect with me and learn more about my work is at our website, which is mike-robbins.com. Until next time, keep bringing your whole self to work. And remember, we're all in this thing together.